When Immortals Fenyx Rising, originally titled Gods and Monsters, launched in December 2020, it seemed to have all the ingredients for success. A gorgeous world, charming stylized visuals, Greek mythology, and gameplay inspired by the beloved Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Ubisoft had crafted what appeared to be a winning formula on paper, a light-hearted action-adventure romp through Greek mythology with puzzle-solving, combat, and exploration. Yet, despite these promising elements, Immortals never achieved the commercial or cultural impact that Ubisoft clearly hoped for. The game that was meant to establish a new IP for the publisher instead became something of a footnote, a good game that few people played and even fewer remember. This review examines why Immortals Fenyx Rising, despite its many strengths, ultimately failed to make its mark in the gaming landscape.
Achilles' sword? Brother must have been good in battle.
Is something wrong with your voice?
I never got a sword. Just saying.
Perhaps the most immediate challenge facing Immortals Fenyx Rising was its release timing and perceived identity crisis. Launching in December 2020, the game arrived in the shadow of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Ubisoft's own flagship title that had launched just weeks earlier. During the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series launch window, when attention was divided among many high-profile releases, 2 years after God of War 2018, which had already delivered a definitive, albeit very different take on Greek mythology. 3 years after The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, to which Immortals bore more than a passing resemblance. This last comparison proved particularly problematic. From its stamina-based climbing to its puzzle-filled open world, Immortals invited direct comparisons to Nintendo's masterpiece, comparisons it could not possibly win. That's why we've seen a lot of reviews stating that Immortals is what happens when you order Breath of the Wild on Wish.com, which is not good. The game wasn't helped by its original Gods and Monsters title, becoming Immortals Fenyx Rising, a name so forgettable and generic that even now, years later, many gamers still refer to it as that Ubisoft Greek mythology game or confuse it with other titles. The rebrand, reportedly due to trademark issues with Monster Energy, resulted in a mouthful of a title that failed to communicate the game's playful nature or mythological setting with the clarity of its original name. Immortals suffered from trying to appeal to too many audiences at once, without fully satisfying any of them. The game's tone varied between kid-friendly humor with Zeus and Prometheus as comedic narrators, standard Ubisoft open-world design philosophy, Breath of the Wild-inspired exploration and puzzle solving, mythological storytelling that was neither fully committed to authenticity nor to subversion. This resulted in a game that felt like it was designed by a committee, pleasant but lacking a clear unified vision. The humor, while occasionally landing, often felt forced and at odds with the game's more earnest moments. Zeus, voiced by the talented Daniel Matmore, would crack jokes during serious story beats, creating tonal whiplash that undermined the emotional investment. It's like they couldn't decide if they were making a game for kids, for Assassin's Creed fans, or for Zelda fans, so they tried to make it for all three and ended up pleasing none of them in full.
I'm going to go. What's so funny?
You said the go twice, but you still haven't laughed.
My brother was turned to stone, and I can't save him. The one person I tried to help robbed me, and all you can do is laugh.
Whoa! Those are all true. Are you an oracle?
Perhaps no aspect of Immortals Fenyx Rising's failure is more apparent than its marketing, or rather the lack of thereof. Despite being a new IP from a major publisher, Immortals received a fraction of the marketing push that Ubisoft typically dedicates to its Assassin's Creed or Far Cry titles. The game's advertising was kinda sparse, unmemorable, and failed to communicate what made Immortals special. Most damning of all, Ubisoft seemed to cannibalize its own release by focusing marketing efforts on Valhalla, which launched just a month before Immortals. And the result is that many potential players simply didn't know the game existed at all, and those who did were unclear on what it offered. The name change from Gods and Monsters to the less memorable Immortals Fenyx Rising further complicated brand recognition, creating confusion in the marketplace. It's as if Ubisoft released the game expecting it to fail. Their marketing budget appeared minimal compared to their other titles from the same period.
Fillet me, it'll numb my pain. Just do it!
What? No, calm down,
Back up! I think you do the honors, or they will.
From a technical standpoint, Immortals performed adequately across platforms, but never wowed players with its technology. While the art direction was appealing, a colorful, cel-shaded approach to Greek mythology, the game didn't push any technical boundaries or showcase next-gen capabilities in meaningful ways. On last-gen consoles, the game ran at a stable 30 FPS with occasional dips. Next-gen version offered 60 FPS options, but without the visual bells and whistles that might have made it a showcase title for the new hardware. The Nintendo Switch version, while commendably feature-complete, suffered from significant visual downgrades and performance issues, reinforcing the unfavorable comparison to Breath of the Wild, which ran more smoothly on the same hardware 3 years earlier. At its core, Immortals offered a satisfying gameplay loop of combat, puzzles, and exploration. Combat was fleshy and responsive, with a good variety of godly abilities and upgrade paths. The puzzles, while derivative of Breath of the Wild's shrines, were generally well designed and rewarding to solve. However, where the game faltered was in its pacing and variety. The world of the Golden Isle, while visually diverse, fell into the trap that plagues many Ubisoft games, overwhelming the player with map icons and collectibles. The game features Worlds of Tartaros, or puzzle dungeons, myth challenges, constellation puzzles, lyre challenges, epic chests, resource gathering points, enemy camps, fast travel points, hidden boss fights, and that's not even a complete list. While individually well crafted, the sheer volume of activities led to repetition and fatigue. By the 15-hour mark of a 30+ hour game, players had seen most of what Immortals had to offer mechanically, yet the game continued to stretch these same ideas across its substantial runtime. Immortals doesn't know when to quit. It's like being at a party where everyone's having a good time, but instead of ending on a high note, the host insists you stay for another 3 hours playing the same games you have already played. The story of Immortals centered on Fenyx, a customizable protagonist who must save the Greek gods from the Titan Typhon. The narrative was told with humor and heart, with Zeus and Prometheus serving as unreliable narrators who frequently broke the fourth wall. This approach had its charms, but also its drawbacks. The constant commentary from Zeus and Prometheus, while occasionally funny, often undermined the emotional stakes of the story. Their banter sometimes felt like watching a mythological version of Mystery Science Theater 3000, with the gods crackling wise about the very story they were telling. Fenyx, meanwhile, remained a relatively blank slate, despite efforts to give them a backstory and motivation. As a customizable protagonist, Fenyx lacked the strong characterization that might have made players more invested in their journey. The game's depictions of the Greek gods were its narrative bright spot. Each deity exhibited memorable personality quirks that played with mythological traditions while adding new twists. Aphrodite as a valley girl, Ares as an insecure warrior, and Hephaestus as a reclusive tinkerer all added color to the world. However, these characterizations sometimes lean too heavily on one-note jokes, reducing complex mythological figures to sitcom stereotypes.
With the wings, he would be able to flit across the ancient bridge and find out.
I wouldn't just strap on discarded junk. Who knows where those have been?
Ubisoft supported Immortals with 3 DLC packs, a new god, additional Vaults of Tartarus with higher difficulty, Myths of the Eastern Realm, a new adventure based on Chinese mythology, The Lost Gods, top-down action RPG with different gameplay mechanics. While these expansions added substantial content, they faced 2 significant problems. First, by the time they were released, most players had moved on. The game hadn't built the kind of dedicated community that eagerly awaits DLCs. The DLC packages were disconnected from each other, with Myths of the Eastern Realm featuring a completely different protagonist and setting, and Lost Gods dramatically changing the gameplay perspective. Rather than building on what worked in the base game, these expansions felt like experiments that further diluted the game's identity. The Myths of the Eastern Realm DLC in particular represented a missed opportunity. Its exploration of Chinese mythology could have been a standout feature if given proper development time and resources. Instead, it felt rushed and superficial, reinforcing the perception that Ubisoft wasn't fully committed to the Immortals IP at all. Despite generally favorable reviews, with Metacritic scores ranging from 77 to 82 depending on the platform, Immortals Fenyx Rising underperformed commercially. While Ubisoft hasn't released specific sales figures, the company acknowledged in financial reports that the game didn't meet expectations. Several factors contributed to this disappointing sales: heavy discounting shortly after release, because the game was 50% off within 3 months, release during a crowded holiday season, competition from Ubisoft's own titles, minimal marketing presence, unfavorable comparisons to more established games. Perhaps most tellingly, Ubisoft has shown no signs of developing a sequel, suggesting that the game's performance didn't justify continuing the franchise. This stands in stark contrast to other new IPs from the publisher that received immediate sequel announcements after successful launches. Ironically, Immortals Fenyx Rising's greatest failure might have been that it played things too safe. While borrowing elements from Breath of the Wild, it maintained many conventional Ubisoft design tropes. A map filled with icons and collectibles, progression systems tied to gathering resources, segmented open-world regions, crafting and upgrade mechanics, purchasable time savers in the in-game store. These elements weren't poorly implemented, but they represented a fundamental misunderstanding of what made Breath of the Wild revolutionary. Nintendo's title succeeded by stripping away conventional open-world design elements and emphasizing discovery and player agency. Immortals, by contrast, kept the scaffolding of traditional open-world design while adopting only the surface-level features of its inspiration. As a result, Immortals Fenyx Rising is what happens when corporate game design meets genuine creativity and neither side fully wins. Looking at Immortals Fenyx Rising 4 years after its release, it's easy to see missed opportunities that might have made it more successful. First, embrace the mythology more deeply. Rather than using Greek myths as window dressing for standard open-world activities, the game could have built its core mechanics around the specific powers and stories of the gods. Second, commit to an art style. The game's visuals, while pleasant, lacked the distinct personality that might have made it more memorable. A bolder artistic choice, perhaps leaning into ancient Greek pottery art styles or more exaggerated cartoon aesthetic, could have given it a unique visual identity. 3. Focus on quality over quantity. A smaller, more densely packed world with fewer but more meaningful activities would have avoided the content fatigue that plagued the game. 4. Release window strategy. Launching away from Assassin's Creed Valhalla and the next-gen console releases would have given the game more room to breathe in the market. And finally, double down on humor. If comedy was the selling point, the writing needed to be sharper and more consistent, perhaps bringing in comedy writers with experience in gaming.
From the sea foam, Aphrodite rose, full-grown, beautiful as that same pearl.
I can't take this anymore. Zeus, Gaia lied to you about how Aphrodite was born.
Today, Immortals Fenyx Rising exists in a curious limbo. It's frequently cited as an underrated gem in gaming discussions, often appearing on lists of overlooked games. It regularly goes on sale for deep discounts, occasionally gaining new players who are pleasantly surprised by what they find. Yet, its cultural footprint remains minimal, unlike the other commercial failures that found cult following like Psychonauts or Beyond Good and Evil. Immortals hasn't developed the passionate fan community that might pressure Ubisoft into revisiting the IP. The game represents a fascinating case study in how even good games can fail in today's market if they lack a clear identity, released at the wrong time, or don't receive proper publisher support. It's not enough for a game to be just good, it needs to stand out, to offer something memorable in an increasingly crowded marketplace. If there is a lesson for developers in the story of Immortals Fenyx Rising, it might be this: borrowing ideas from successful games is fine, but understanding why those ideas worked in their original context is essential. Breath of the Wild succeeded not because of stamina meters or physics puzzles, but because it trusted players to find their own fun in a world designed around discovery and experimentation. Immortals took the surface elements but retained traditional design philosophies that undermined what made its inspiration special. It's a reminder that innovation isn't just about features, but about the philosophy underpinning those features. Immortals Fenyx Rising is not a bad game at all, far from it. It's a solidly designed, visually appealing action-adventure with enjoyable combat, clever puzzles, and a world worth exploring. In many ways, it's exactly what it set out to be: an accessible, family-friendly take on Greek mythology with Breath of the Wild influences. Yet, its failure to capture a significant audience or leave a lasting impression on the gaming landscape serves as a reminder that in today's industry, good often isn't good enough. New IPs need to carve out a distinct identity, offer something genuinely novel, or execute familiar ideas with exceptional polish. Immortals did none of these things exceptionally. It was competent across the board, but never excellent in any particular area. It borrowed without innovating, referenced without subverting, and played it safe when boldness might have saved it. In Greek tragedies, the fatal flaw of a hero often leads to their downfall. For Immortals Fenyx Rising, that flaw wasn't any single design decision, but a lack of conviction in its own identity. Like Icarus, flying too close to the sun, it reached for greatness but fell short, leaving behind only the memory of what might have been. And much like the forgotten heroes of Greek mythology whose names have faded from memory, Immortals Fenyx Rising seems destined to be remembered simply as that Ubisoft game that was kind of like Breath of the Wild but with Greek gods. A fate that, while not tragic, feels like a missed opportunity for what could have been a truly legendary gaming experience.